right, welcome to Grunts and Groans, ladies and gentlemen. I want to say something very unusual. Today, my guest, most of the time I'm interviewing big, sweaty hunks of wrestlers out here, mean guys, rough guys, but today, what I'm going to try to do is talk to, if I possibly can, I'm going to try to communicate with the angel, sometimes known as the fallen angel. Leave me alone, angel, and I'm trying to do this show. It's my show. I'll do the talking here. But what I want to know is, I've known Kevin Sullivan, I've known the Purple Haze for a long time, and what is it that makes you believe that Kevin Sullivan is so right about what he is doing?
He tells me so. It's just the way that he says it. It's his body language, you know. You know how it is, Jack.
No, I really don't, because I'm not into Kevin Sullivan's body, and the only thing I'd like to be doing to his body is slamming it on the mat and dropping some elbows on it. Do you know? Does your mama know where you're at is what I want to know. Does your mama care where you're at?
I don't know about that. I take care of myself. My master takes care of me. I don't worry about
Who is your master?
Kevin Sullivan is my master.
That's exactly what I'm talking about. Do you understand, young lady? Your daddy, your mom and daddy, don't they care about what you're doing, where you're at?
I don't know. I don't care. I just worry about my master and what he's doing. Everything that he does, you know? You know how it is, Jack. I've told you many times. Remember those dreams you used to have?
I hadn't been doing any dreaming. Now, let me tell you something. Don't try any of that Aberdeen hokey pokey stuff on me. Because I'm telling you right now, I know that your daddy wants you to call home, because I'm going to start checking the missing kids things, because you may be missing. Now, Kevin Sullivan, you've took this young lady. I understand that was a very successful model at one time on the top of the world. Could have demanded any price you wanted to for Playboy or anything like that. And look what you've done to her. And now you're hanging out with a rabble, with a bunch like Kevin Sullivan and Purple Haze. Doesn't that bother you just a little bit?
No, not at all. Not at all, Jack. You know, there is one thing I would like to know. Superstar was talking about putting his pythons around Kevin and around the Purple Haze. Well, what I'd like to know is, when are you going to put your pythons around me?
I don't have to answer that here. I don't have to get involved with this. Now, let me tell you something. Don't try any of that on me, because between you and Kevin Sullivan, it's not going to work. I told you to keep your creepy hands off those little kids of mine, and don't think it'll work on the old man, because it's not going to work on me, Angel. And you better go back to hanging out with that riffraff that you've been hanging out with.
Oh, Jack, now don't talk that way to me. You know better. You really want to be nice to me. You really do. I know you do, Jack. Oh, it's in here. I know your heart, Jack. I know you. I know everything about you.
We'll be right back after this for another Grunts and Groans.
NWO black and white music rings out here in the Marine Midland Arena once again. And I mean, matches have been made and coming at us from all sides here tonight. They've thrown out that seventh match. Booker T and Benoit will wrestle one more time. And the winner will wrestle one more time at the Great American Bash Sunday. The winner will go on to face Nick Finley that night. Like I said, the winner wrestles twice.
All right. You've already told us how much you love us, and we truly do appreciate it. Just two more things, really, before we go tonight. And again, I want to thank you all for sharing the love that I feel. And, you know, we know Randy Savage is going to be here tonight, and we want to let Randy know that it's Niagara Falls, not Viagra Falls. So you can put your bucket away and just come here and wrestle. But speaking of Randy Savage, he made some rather biting comments that I thought were totally misplaced, and they were just meant to lash out at you as a human being and as a person he used to have a relationship with, which I think was very, very low and unprofessional. And as the new assistant to the president, you point out to me from time to time things that are just generally wrong with the organization. And in my attempt to right those things, I thought it only appropriate that I give you this opportunity to speak your mind. So Liz, take the microphone, please, and share with the people your thoughts on Randy Savage.
Well, you know, Randy Savage, you came out here Monday night and You told the world that you were over me, that you were over me. Well, once again, you've gotten those facts confused because I'm the one that left you. And I didn't have to get over you because the best thing about you's always been your checkbook, and I've already got that. You know, the whole world knows I've always been your crutch. Well, I know you hardly have a leg to stand on. It really doesn't matter what the world knows. It matters what I know and what you know. And what you know is, I'm the best thing that ever happened to you. I'm the reason you're Randy Savage. You know, it's time to move on. I have, and I'm not so sure you have. But wipe that heart off your sleeve. And when you do, wipe the slate clean and think about that macho man thing. You know, it's just, oh, please. Ugh.
Go ahead and tell him. Go ahead and tell him. Who's the real macho man? Go ahead.
The real macho man, as everyone knows, our president.
Thank you all very much for yielding the floor to one of the most beautiful women that has ever graced this arena or this industry, I might add. And Randy, well, eat your heart out, sucker. Go ahead and bite me. Let's go. Thank you all very much. We love you. We love each and every one of you. She loves you too.
You know, that's all really strategic.
Division champion and number 22 on PWP's Top 25 of 2022, Mike Bailey here, and you are listening to Pro Wrestling Proverbs with Logan and Anthony.
On our YouTube channel, you will see a series called PW Profiles. And on this, we go through and we discuss briefly the careers of individuals who are kind of just lost to wrestling encyclopedias. They're recognized for one moment or a couple of moments, that's about it, even though they have lengthy careers. Now, the two individuals talked about on today's podcast could have been profiles, but we think that these two are some of the biggest examples of the negativity outshining the positivity when their careers are usually discussed. For one, it was her unfortunate murder at the hands of her husband, as well as his suicide and the murder of their son. For the other, it was the abuse that she was given backstage while traveling with her husband, and then her unfortunate death as well. We're not going to try and focus on these things. If you want to hear about the first incident, we do have 3 videos / podcasts up on it. Maybe 4?
We have 4. We have a...
the pre... Yeah, I forget about the pre one. Yep, but we have 4 up. If you want to go listen to those, it gives great detail. I think more detail than most people are usually given, or most people usually give. So definitely go check that out. But I guess from there, I will begin talking about the woman, Nancy Benoit. So, like most people at the time, or most women valets at the time, didn't have a traditional start into the wrestling business. This, of course, was 84, 85, around the time of Hulkamania, around the time of the Crockett boom. After graduating high school and doing a couple jobs here or there, a beautiful woman was needed for the cover of a 1984 June edition of Wrestling All-Stars. Nancy was then suggested for the role. Nancy, of course, was a model and would sit ringside or alongside her husband at the time. And she was chosen. She would appear as Para in the Sports Review Wrestling magazine in Apartment Wrestling. Now, apartment wrestling is when women would dress up either scantily clad, good outfits, and images would be taken of them catfighting in an apartment setting. So I know what you're thinking. Yeah, pretty much in a way, a form of soft porn or softcore pornography. You know, nothing blatant, but that was kind of, from what I've seen, the expectation. You know, something for guys to look at. It was actually at this shoot where she met none other than Kevin Sullivan, who wanted her to be a part of his group. It took months, especially at this time. Wrestling wasn't looked at as something positive. We were kind of at that in-between point of why would someone want to get involved in this? After the big Madison Square Garden boom and before the Hulkamania boom, as I said. But she finally agreed to it, and she became his on-air valet, becoming the Fallen Angel. Now, if you Google any pictures of the Fallen Angel and Kevin Sullivan at this time, it is exactly what you'd picture of a Satanist or dark gimmick. Chains, black, leather, face paint, tongues out, eyes rolled in the back of her head. She had the big hair, the jungle hair, I guess is a way to call it, I would think. You would see Jane sporting this in a lot of Tarzan movies. She looked the part. They weren't the only ones in the group. Luna Vachon was there. The Purple Haze, who's better known as Mark Lewin, a Detroit, Michigan wrestling staple. Sir Oliver Humperdinck, who, if you watched NWA or even a little bit of WWF at this time, he was the big ginger-haired manager. I always called him the Captain Lou of the NWA. But they were definitely a group. They were big in Florida, but Nancy and Kevin did travel throughout the United States in this gimmick. They appeared in ICW as well as Southwest Championship Wrestling. The two actually married in 1985. Nancy was not just a valet, though, as she would mix it up sometimes in the ring. An example of this was in Hawaii for NWA Polynesian Wrestling, where she wrestled Debbie Combs, a mainstay of the women's division at the time. They would not just be in the territories, though, as Nancy moved to WCW. And her first real gimmick was the name Robin Green, and she was a fan of none other than Rick Steiner. She wore a Steiner t-shirt, large glasses, kind of looked like a librarian, the girl next door. This worked because Rick Steiner at the time, of course, had the varsity jacket, was the amateur wrestler. He was kind of the dim-witted guy. So it was the whole, Beauty and the Beast scenario. She'd sit in the audience, interact with Rick. As all good things go in wrestling, she turned on Rick. And she eventually aligned herself with Kevin Sullivan, adopting the ring name of Woman. She also became the manager of Doom, which was wrestling's worst-kept secret of Butch Reed and Ron Simmons. And after leaving the tag team of Doom, she would then team herself up with Ric Flair and the Four Horsemen. This was not long-standing, though, as Kevin Sullivan and herself would go to that Philadelphia-based bingo hall promotion, ECW. She actually managed Kevin Sullivan and some unknown, the Tasmaniac, the ECW Tag Team Championship. Hitting, of course, as the Tasmaniac was the jungle gimmick of who would then become Taz. They held the championship for about 4 months before they were defeated by ECW mainstays, the Public Enemy. Kevin Sullivan went back to WCW in the spring of '94, and that's when Woman began managing none other than the Sandman. The Sandman at this time was single. He wasn't working with his wife / valet Peaches at the time because, he accidentally hit her during a match, and it kind of, while he was temporarily blinded, it's a mistake. This led that Woman to just drive that wedge between Sandman and his valet Peaches. convincing the Sandman that Peaches was a no-good cheater with ECW wrestler Tommy Cairo. Woman is what the Sandman needed for this character, though. She'd open his beers, light his cigarettes. I mean, if you thought the Sandman entrance was cool before, having Woman/Nancy with him to, you know, like as I said, light his cigarettes, open his beers, it just added a whole new aura to it. She also carried the Singapore Cane down, and she'd beat the shit out of opponents if needed. She was not afraid to get dirty. You know, she would mix it up in ECW too, fighting Cairo and Peaches in a Singapore Cane match. It was at this match that after Peaches and Cairo won, Peaches then started caning the Sandman in his nuts until Woman threw salt in their eyes. This allowed Sandman to get back up, and they started to cane Cairo and Peaches. Then Woman became embroiled in one of the more legendary feuds in ECW history, Sandman and Tommy Dreamer. This then led to one of the biggest moments. I'm not sure if you're familiar with this one, being early ECW. Tommy Dreamer pushed a lit cigarette into the eye of the Sandman and caned him in the face.
Oh God.
I'm
not familiar with
this then quote unquote blinded the Sandman, which, you know, was popular at the time, blinding a wrestler, writing him off, having kayfabe. Looked real. Woman then announced, being the supportive woman that she was leaving the Sandman. He's useless. And then after Tommy Cairo mocked the Sandman, Tommy Dreamer challenged him to a match in November to Remember. Tommy Dreamer's going to stand up for the guy he blinded, because he's such a good guy. Ponytail and all. Actually, not at that time. But this same event, Peaches tried to reconcile with the Sandman. Woman interrupted and caned Peaches and threatened the Sandman. Then Tommy Dreamer tried coming to stop Woman. The Sandman revealed he was not blinded. He attacked Dreamer. And he used Woman as a ploy to pit Dreamer and Cairo against each other. He faked blindness. She faked leaving Sandman. What a woman. April of 95, Woman again left the Sandman. This time aligning herself with ECW, I would say the original ECW, Shane Douglas. You know, he's the one that threw the NWA title down. But shortly thereafter, she turned on Douglas and helped the Sandman win his second ECW Heavyweight Championship. Another ruse by this woman. Woman then began carrying the ECW title to ringside. And of course, she helped him keep his championship. She also then began managing Too Cold Scorpio, the ECW television champion. I haven't done too much research into it, but I'm pretty sure this would make her the first manager to manage Triple Crown in ECW. Then, in 95, in one of the last big feuds, big moments she had in ECW, as the Sandman is feuding with Mikey Whipwreck, a controversial storyline where Woman would become visibly sexually aroused when the Sandman would cane Mikey Whipwreck. Stunning Steve Austin actually helped Mikey Whipwreck win the title in a ladder match, as Stunning Steve prevented Woman from interfering. And then Too Cool Scorpio defeated Rocco Rock in a singles match for the ECW Tag Team Championship. Yep, you figure it out. And then he selected the Sandman as his partner. Later on, the Sandman would regain the Heavyweight Championship by defeating Whipwreck and Austin. And thus, Woman had control of all three ECW championships. Unfortunately, this was short-lived as Whipwreck would defeat Too Cool Scorpio, and the Sandman would lose to Raven. Woman then announced that she was returning to WCW, effectively ending her partnership with the Sandman and Too Cool Scorpio. Now, I know this wasn't at the peak of ECW, as this was 97, 98, when the peak happened, I should say. Being there from 93 to 96, Woman was involved in the early days of Extreme Championship Wrestling. She was involved in feuds with Sandman, Dreamer, and Raven, with Too Cool Scorpio, some of the bigger names of the company. And you never really hear about this. I mean, I might see her in a vignette every so often, but it's got to be a WWE, a non-WWE based one, which we'll get to later. But it's just crazy, all this that she's been involved with. And really, until researching this, I didn't know she was that involved in ECW.
Yeah, but you think of her, I always just think of her time in that little time she was in WCW. At least for me personally.
Yeah, you don't really hear about the ECW. Even, I think I have every WWE made ECW DVD out there, and I don't remember seeing a lot of her. Like I said, maybe a vignette here and there where she's coming to the ring with Sandman. That's about it. It's almost like a blip, which, knowing ECW stuff, Luna Vachon was kind of a blip. And at the time, they'd bring in, Hawk, Arn Anderson, WCW people, before and after this. Even Sid Vicious came in for a cup of coffee. So with how they portray it, it's almost like she was just there for a cup of coffee, but clearly not. She did come back to WCW as Woman on the January 22nd, 1996 episode of Monday Nitro. She was one of the many women who stood in the aisle and waved as Randy Savage and Hulk Hogan came to the ring. As I said before, as all good things happen in wrestling, February 5th, she turned on Randy Savage during his match with Chris Benoit and rejoined Ric Flair, Arn Anderson, Brian Pillman, and Chris Benoit in the current incarnation of the Four Horsemen, alongside the next woman that we will be talking about, none other than Miss Elizabeth.
Yeah, well, what can you say about Miss Elizabeth, though, that most wrestling fans don't already know? Her early life, she went to University of Kentucky, go Wildcats. She got a degree in communication, which led her landing a job as a camera operator at her father's TV station, which hosted wrestling events for ICW, International Championship Wrestling, in Lexington, Kentucky. It was an organization funded by Angelo Poffo. Poffo, does that ring a bell to you?
That sounds a little familiar. I think he had a son or two.
He had a son or two. He did have two sons. He probably wish he only had one. No offense. Well, never mind. They're both dead. They're not gonna hear it.
Yeah, none taken.
Yeah, none taken. I think the story goes, I don't know if you remember, I think it was on the Dark Side of the Ring. They somehow, even though she was a fan of ICW and was working as a camera operator there, apparently they met at the gym in Frankfort, Kentucky, or Lexington, Kentucky, or somewhere around there. They met and they just quickly got married. December 30th of 1984, they got married in Frankfort, Kentucky. But also around that time, later that year, Miss Elizabeth would debut in the WWF, in the Fed. And what's that?
Have you seen her debut? Like, have you seen how they brought her in?
Yeah, Randy was like kind of teasing. This is back in the time where everybody had to have a manager.
Yeah, all the heels did. Yeah.
They had to be aligned with somebody. So Randy Savage was looking for a manager, and this woman kind of comes out. Well, she comes out, and Bruno is kind of like drooling all over.
He's starstruck. Yeah.
Over this woman, and that's kind of a good introduction for her too. Because she eventually become like known as the first lady of wrestling, known for her elegance and beauty, and not really showing off. I know this is the 80s, so wearing like skimpy outfits like they did in the late 90s.
Yeah, and it's
happened, but
It's funny that you bring that up because, as far as I know, I mean, people might have had valets here or there, like a baby doll or a Peaches, but the biggest one was Moolah when she was Slave Girl Moolah and managed Buddy Rogers. So it's kind of funny that they kind of skip over Moolah. She's the first lady of wrestling. In retrospect, it's funny because you've got Bobby Heenan, you've got Jimmy Hart, you've got, I think, Fuji, Captain Lou, and he's like, nope, choosing the hot girl.
Choosing that girl. Well, on TV they never said that they were married.
Yeah.
So it was. So he just randomly just picked this girl that came out. Awesome, whatever. I'm not gonna sit here and go through each individual match because now we're just talking about everything Randy Savage did in WWE, which is a lot, and she was an integral part of everything he did. But some of the more notable things that she herself was more involved in, the first thing was Savage's feud with George the Animal Steel. The story told in fast forward here. George Steele just kind of got some sort of affection for Miss Elizabeth. He's an animal. He's a simple-minded cretin, and he wanted to get with Miss Elizabeth.
Yeah, Beauty and the Beast.
Beauty and the Beast. And this would lead to a match at WrestleMania 2. Elizabeth was there in the corner, helped Savage defeat him, and then like I said,
this kind of reminds me of, well, I guess Otis and Mandy Rose reminds me of this.
Yeah. That was such a good feud. That was such a good story, and they just dropped it as soon as fans came back. That tore me off.
It's kind of like Steele and Elizabeth was dropped for other things.
Which is fine. Because, like I said, we could just go on and talk about all of Randy Savage's accomplishments in the WWF. WrestleMania 3 with Ricky Steamboat winning the IC title.
Regarded as one of the best, WrestleMania or matches of all time. And then turning babyface.
Yeah, and then that would lead to him finally winning the WWE Championship at WrestleMania 4, winning the tournament. And which leads to that really iconic photo of the two. Elizabeth on Savage's shoulders, the belt. That was my wallpaper on my phone for the longest time. Probably one of the most iconic photos in wrestling. Hard to think of something else that comes to mind.
I think only thing that compares to it is years later at WrestleMania 7 or 8 when he hoists her up yet again.
Yeah. She won the Slammy Award in '87. I forgot to bring this up. She won Woman of the Year.
Oh.
But she was given to it by Honky Tonk Man. I guess they were feuding at the time.
Yeah, what a slime ball.
Yeah, but Randy Savage, he didn't just win that title on his own. He got a little bit of help. He got some help from the Hulkster brother.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned how she didn't wear scantily clad outfits. One of the big things that stick out in my mind, is when Hogan and Savage fought DiBiase and Andre the Giant, and to help them get the win, she took her skirt off to distract the heel team.
Yeah, that was SummerSlam '88. I think that was their first match together as the Powers.
Yeah, she ripped it off. She's like, take a look, boys, and it worked. They got distracted. I'm sure there was a lot of wrestling fans, sexual awakenings at that point. Elizabeth was always one that people loved. There's a lot of posters bought. There's a lot of shirts bought with Elizabeth. And that, people loved it. It's funny when it's described, because even on WWE.com, they describe it as like she's got nothing underneath.
Yeah.
And she's essentially wearing a pair of Hogan tights, like a red pair.
Oh, how Savage didn't notice it earlier.
Yes, right? But, when you eventually watch it, I mean, I'm sure everyone had that interest to like, whoa, this happened. Let me take a look, and then you watch it, and you're like, oh. I mean, I've seen more than that on fucking cable TV.
Hell yeah.
It was big at the time.
If you stay up late enough.
Yeah, I actually have. I'm pretty sure I have the figure from that event of Elizabeth hanging up on my wall. I mean, her in the yellow dress with the red armband. It's an iconic look. The Mega Powers. It's funny how they were only a team for like 4 or 5 months, if that.
Yeah,
But on every WWE.com list of tag teams, they're always in like the top 10.
well, they're just so
Didn't win a tag title. Yeah. Oh yeah, that handshake.
ground shaking. Yeah, like it didn't last long. It would lead to obviously probably one of the most important nights in WF history. Uh, Saturday night's main event, February 1989. Elizabeth is knocked out from the ring, and Hulk Hogan leaves Randy Savage in the ring to take Liz backstage to get
Dirty scoundrel.
how dare he? How dare
He had lust in his eyes.
yeah, he returned to the ring only to get slapped by Savage for leaving him alone with the Twin Towers. And then after they went backstage to check out Elizabeth, it happens.
Mega Powers imploded.
They implode. And Elizabeth is stuck in the middle. Does he go? Who does she manage? Her longtime husband, or well, like you said, they weren't technically married at the time.
Yeah,
right?
but still, her longtime partner, or this guy that just came around.
Yeah, but she's in the neutral corner. But doesn't matter. Hulk Hogan beats Savage for the WWF title. Then she, eventually, over the next year, she finds herself cornered. Savage would leave her and become the Macho King. And he started being managed by Sherry.
Yeah, someone who I think if we were to pick a third to throw into this, I think she'd be a good one to throw in. But the difference is, I think if you went to a fan, say your dad, or even my dad, who watched at the time, I think they could tell us more about Sherry, who she managed, what she did, who she wrestled, than they could about Elizabeth and Woman. I mean, they could say Elizabeth managed Savage, was involved in the Mega Powers. They could say that Woman was with the Horsemen. But Sherry, I think, they'd be like, oh, she's with Shawn Michaels. She's with Savage. She was with DiBiase. She managed Harlem Heat. She wrestled. Like, there's a bigger spotlight put on Sherry. And I think even now, when they talk about women, Sherry's always one of the older ones, especially when Medusa comes on screen, because she'll mention how Sherry was the influence. It's just one of those things. It's weird that Elizabeth isn't mentioned as much as Sherry. I know Elizabeth didn't wrestle, but I think she still played an integral part, especially in these early Hulkamania days.
Yeah. Yeah, she's maybe somebody we should cover a little bit more in depth and maybe in another podcast. For sure. But Elizabeth, who did she decide to corner with? None other than the American Dream.
Oh yeah.
And Sapphire.
Sweet Sapphire.
This was WrestleMania 6. Like a mixed gender tag match, one of the very first in WWF history. It seems to be the end of it for a little while until about a year later, and when Randy Savage loses a retirement match to none other than the fucking Ultimate Warrior of all people.
Yeah.
And Queen Sherry, she can't be with no fucking loser that's gonna be retired. So Queen Sherry starts attacking him after the match, kicking him while he's down. He just lost. He's a bum now. He has no job. And then all of a sudden, the greatest reunion of all time, Miss Elizabeth jumps to rail and chases Sherry away. Icon.
Yep, I couldn't tell you what many people are wearing at different events. but I know that Elizabeth had on the sparkly black with the white stars.
Yep.
Savage had on the blue and white. And like I alluded to earlier, the image of them reuniting, they always show that clip, and then they show the one of the kid crying in the crowd. They go hand in hand. Big moment. It's kind of funny that, this was Savage's first retirement. Didn't last long.
Yeah, that's crazy. Savage, I know this is supposed to be about Elizabeth and woman. When did Savage start wrestling?
Let's see.
1979.
Yeah. So then he
66. I think it might be 66. And he's already retiring by, what is that, 91, 92?
Or so we think.
But he's not retired.
Nope, he's got another good old 8 years in the tank full time, and then he goes up to about 2003, 2004 with TNA Impact.
We don't gotta talk about that. We don't gotta.
No. Yeah. We mentioned it a little bit here and there.
And then, real quick, just rounding out Elizabeth's time in WWF. The most iconic SummerSlam moment of all time. One of.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not even a match. The marriage.
Yes.
Well, should we know that at the time their marriage is in turmoil as it is. But here they are getting remarried.
So I want to ask you this.
Okay.
Do you think Vince had them get married on screen to try and I know they've talked about how Vince tries to create relationships behind the scenes, right? Yeah. Do you think this was him trying to rekindle this because he wanted them to be a couple? Yeah. It sounds good, doesn't it?
Yeah. That sounds like something he would do.
Yeah, look, I really liked them. You're divorcing? Nope. You're getting married in the ring, damn it.
Yeah, well, yeah. At this time, they've already been married about 7 years. They got married in '84, late '84, and this would kind of lead into one of Savage's big feuds with Jake Roberts. This leads to the iconic moment with the snake bite on the arm. This was shortly after that, but Elizabeth's role kind of fades after this. The only thing left for her to be involved in is the Savage's little feud with Flair.
Oh, the pictures.
Yeah. Ric Flair had pictures of Elizabeth cheating on Savage with him.
Allegedly.
Those pictures did turn out being fake. They're fake photos.
I couldn't imagine Ric Flair lying about something.
Ric Flair's a pretty honest guy. I will say so myself. Yeah, he wouldn't do anything.
And he treats women with respect.
Would never do something cowardly, like making people wait in a line for hours to not even meet him. He would never do something like that.
I eventually did. I didn't get my signature. I mean, I did on a figure, but not on a magazine. That's here nor there. This is about woman, Miss Elizabeth, not about Conrad Thompson running a shady convention. Woman and Miss Elizabeth. But yeah, that feud, Savage and Flair, it's funny because that was the match that happened. It was supposed to be Hogan and Flair, but supposedly Vince didn't think Hogan and Flair, after seeing them at house shows, would pull a Mania main event. I don't know if he was on, like, if he was drunk, if he was on drugs, or what. But Hogan and Flair pulled in a crowd in Australia in 2009. All right.
Yeah.
These two at Mania would have blown.
Missed opportunity.
I don't know why. No, 100%. I think it's probably the biggest missed opportunity in a WrestleMania history to have Hogan go with Sid. Flair and Savage, not a bad match. Really good. Savage winning the title again. On the injured leg.
They still could have done it. They could have done it at SummerSlam '92.
Yeah.
I don't know the dates after this off the top of my head, but it's not like Hogan.
Then we couldn't have seen all.
like year-long feud or whatever.
We couldn't have seen Warrior in his airbrushed singlet, though. And then people couldn't have assumed that Warrior died and someone else took his spot. I mean,
It's too easy.
too easy.
And then, so Elizabeth kind of fades into the background after this. After WrestleMania, what is that, 8?
Yep.
Kind of fades into the background a little bit. In 1992, they do file for divorce in real life. Not storyline, real life. So about less than a year after the wedding on TV, they file for divorce in real life. She's out of the spotlight for a while, at least in the world of wrestling. No one sees her, but she would eventually pop up in World Championship Wrestling in 1995. About 3 years later. I'll be honest. This time, in WCW, I was never a WCW kid growing up. Didn't really watch it. Never went back and watched it. So I'm just going with what people have told me. Going off of what I can gather from the internet. Now she popped up in WCW alongside Randy Savage. They're not remarried at the time.
Yeah.
And
No, it had to have been awkward, but Bischoff definitely. People talk about Tony Khan doing it now, trying to capitalize on WWE success. Bischoff 100% did it then, and he let Hogan run the roost, man.
Okay.
Jim Duggan, the Nasty Boys, One Man Gang, Earthquake, Savage and Elizabeth, Brutus Beefcake under his 1,000 Names, Kamala. The Giant was brought in as quote unquote Andre the Giant's son.
shut the fuck up.
I don't think Elizabeth needed to be there. It was cool to see her back with Savage. But this was definitely a Bischoff ploy. It couldn't have been comfortable for either of them either.
Yeah, I don't think so. Especially, well, 3 years.
Yeah.
I don't know how much healing you can do in that time. But like you said earlier, Miss Elizabeth was managing the Four Horsemen. How did she get there? She turned on Randy Savage and helps Flair win the World Heavyweight Championship at Super Bowl VI. That's how you get there. So now
That's how you get there.
Is a third of a team of valets for Ric Flair and the Four Horsemen.
Yes.
Is woman.
Yeah, so as I said, she joined the Horsemen. This was Flair, Anderson, Pillman, and Benoit. This is one of my favorite incarnations. Flair and Anderson, of course, have to be there. Benoit is a Horseman through and through at the time. His technical ability, his mic work is good, not great. When he's in a suit, he looks the part. And then you mentioned a third. Pillman left the Horsemen. They added Steve Mongo McMichael, recent NFL Hall of Fame inductee. He definitely deserves it. Do I think it's crazy that they waited until the man's on his deathbed? Yes. That's another thing for another day. But he brought his wife, Deborah. Woman didn't like that. The two then just argued all the time. When the Horsemen were given interview time, Deborah would come on and she'd usually talk about woman's looks and fashion sense. They didn't like being near each other, but they never had a physical altercation. I think it's because Vince Russo wasn't there. If Vince Russo was there, they'd have been in like a bra and panties match, a pudding match. They're the Four Horsemen, so probably like a horse pen match, something stupid. Bro, these two women, bro. It would have been awful. It's funny though. Yeah, I know. People, that's one of two things people do not like me for. She then started a relationship with Chris Benoit, which is funny because at the time he was feuding with none other than Kevin Sullivan, who was still married to a woman. December 7th rolled around, and this was a WCW Saturday night, and during an interview with Sullivan, there is a home movie of Benoit and a woman in the kitchen Woman taunted Sullivan by saying, "You can't find me. I'm my own woman." And Benoit added, "You consider yourself the master of human chess? Well, my bishop just took your queen." This, of course, as I said, 96, so kayfabe and everything was blurred. And, I mean, what people did know is that Sullivan was booking a little bit. He's married to a woman. Jimmy Hart had to lead Kevin Sullivan off stage. This feud led to Woman clashing with Kevin Sullivan's then valet, none other than Jacqueline, former women's champion, former cruiserweight champion in the WWE. And she was the only woman to do this under the WWE banner. Of course, you know, a WWE Hall of Fame inductee. This was a big feud. The two ladies were actually strapped to each other during one match, and they took shots at each other using the strap as a weapon against the men. We mentioned it before, and it's kind of common knowledge. The relationship between Benoit and Woman led to a real-life affair off-screen. The joke, Kevin Sullivan booked his own divorce. Because as I said, kayfabe was big at this time. You know, if you two are going to be a couple, you got to sleep in the same hotel room, hold each other's hands, go on dates. I don't blame the guy, but there's this thing called the law of attraction, right? Where the reason that you fall for people in elementary school, middle school, is because you're in the same class all the time.
Yeah.
The reason that you like people that you go on dates with constantly is because you're with them all the time. So by having these guys be on TV together, in a hotel room together, shopping together, they fell for each other. I mean, Woman, she was great looking. I've told you this before. I had the WCW tapes at the time, and I had the WCW games before that. And I'm watching it, I see Woman, and little 10, 11-year-old me, I'm like, wow, I really like that. I really, and then it clicked. I'm like, wait, I've played the games. I don't see her on the games. She's just gonna disappear? Well, Chris Benoit beat Kevin Sullivan in a retirement match, so that way Kevin Sullivan could focus on booking. And Woman's last WCW appearance did not take too long after that, May 26, 1997, as she accompanied Benoit to the ring to confront Jimmy Hart, asking where Kevin Sullivan was. No reason was given for Woman's sudden disappearance, and she was never mentioned on WCW programming again. We've talked about this before, you kind of alluded to it. We're wondering if Kevin Sullivan booking led to her being taken off TV. Because, I mean,
for sure.
Because it would have made sense, because the Four Horsemen are always supposed to be ladies' men, and Arn was always the one that didn't have a woman. Flair always had someone, Tully had someone. So it makes sense for Mongo and Benoit, and it would have been a great, you know, bickering, right? Because then that would have been a way for the heels to lose, her and Deborah. She just disappeared. Never to be seen from in a wrestling standpoint again, and it's kind of a shame because she was always involved in something big. So to just have her be yanked from TV, crazy. I know on the dark side of the ring, there's the story of Benoit telling Nancy and her sister, you know, you gotta go, you gotta come with me. Yeah. Would that have led to it? I don't know exactly in the timeline where it falls, but could have happened.
That sounds like something we might have talked about already.
Could have been.
In the Chris Benoit one. While you're finishing up, I can go back and look at her.
Okay.
From that and see if I can find something.
I do know that she married Chris November 23rd of 2000. And as we mentioned before, she filed for divorce the first time, May of 2003, for an irrevocably broken marriage and cruel treatment. Well, we kind of know where everything led to. As I said, I'm not going to go into that. This is supposed to be more a focus on the positive that these women gave to the wrestling community. But her story does not end negatively. 2023, just last year, Pro Wrestling Illustrated, who I've said for a long time is the only awards that truly matter, they gave Nancy Benoit the Stanley Weston Award for Lifetime Achievement. And I've seen some people online, I'm sure some people here thinking, oh, this is just kind of a gimme award, you know? Something negative happened. If you don't mind while you're looking that up, I would like to list the Stanley Weston Lifetime Achievement Award winners from 81 to 2023. It is the magazine's highest honor. And beginning in March of 2023, it was renamed in memory of PWI founder Stanley Weston. So here we go. Starting in 81, and then starting in 2020, there's 2 winners. But starting in 81, Bruno Sammartino, Lou Thez, Grand Wizard, David Von Erich, Dave Shockett, Vern Gagne, Paul Bosch, Bruiser Brody, and Adrian Adonis, Gordon Soley, Buddy Rogers, Fabulous Moolah, Stanley Weston, Andre the Giant, Captain Lil Albano, Ricky Steamboat, Andy Hodge, Arn Anderson, Boba Brazil, Owen Hart, Freddie Blassie, Johnny Valentine, Jim Ross, Bret Hart, Pat Patterson, Eddie Guerrero, Harley Race, Nick Bockwinkel, Ric Flair, Vincent McMahon, Taylor Kowalski, Randy Savage, Bobby Heenan, Dusty Rhodes, Dory Funk Jr., Roddy Piper, Dick Beyer, Jack Briscoe, Antonio Inoki, Stone Cold, Medusa, Stu Stacks, Terry Funk, Ron Simmons, Bill Apter, George Napolitano, Sting, and Nancy Benoit. Although some of these were a little sad. I mean, Grand Wizard was the year he died. David Von Erich was the year he died. Arn Anderson was the year he retired. Owen Hart was the year he died. It's not like the people wouldn't be deserving besides that. So for Nancy to finally get her flowers, something that I don't think WWE will ever truly be allowed to do. And it's a shame because, as I said, she was such an integral part of ECW. She was such a big part of one of the last big feuds before kayfabe was fully broken, fully unveiled. Because of this one black mark, not even caused by herself, something she tried to get out of. It's really, truly a shame.
Elizabeth, after joining the Four Horsemen. I was getting there. That was a dramatic pause. All right.
The 4, I have that figure set.
I know. You have a lot of Four Horsemen stuff.
I love them.
She was forced to join the New World Order. She was the only female member of the group at the time. But her attitude would change when Randy Savage joined the NWO, and that reignited their quote-unquote business relationship.
Uh-oh.
They would stay together throughout the year, and her and Savage wound up feuding with none other than Diamond Dallas Page and Kimberly. Now, what can you tell me about Kimberly?
So, Kimberly, the first time that I truly remember seeing her or anything about her was Diamond Dallas Page. Early on, when he started wrestling full time, she ended up being with the Booty Man, who was one of Brutus Beefcake's many gimmicks. I'm pretty sure she started getting back with Diamond Dallas Page so that way he could have a woman with him. And then, I mean, later on, she would leave him. I believe at one point she was a model. He's no longer with her. It was one of those wrestling relationships that didn't work out. But a lot of times when you see Diamond Dallas Page with a woman, it is Kimberly, especially in this WCW time.
Some real world news here for Elizabeth. She would marry some schmuck named Kerry Labutsky.
Muck.
That's kind of a weird thing to say. He actually looks like a pretty halfway decent guy. He's a attorney, I believe, out of Florida. Other than that, he has a Facebook. I saw his Facebook. Seems like a pretty okay guy.
I don't think that probably lasted very long, though, did it?
Nope, a couple months.
Okay.
They're divorced. I don't think they made it into '98. But anyway, speaking of, if it not lasting long, I think I know why. She eventually began valeting for Lex Luger and Kevin Nash.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. But she would disappear from WCW television in 1999 because she was undergoing breast augmentation surgery. She would return in September '99. At this time, she's dating Lex Luger.
Mm-hmm.
Lex Luger at the time was showing a never-before-seen mean streak.
Yeah.
They were quickly pushing the storyline where Lex Luger was mentally abusing Elizabeth, but Sting was defending her.
This was a crazy time. Do you know in your notes there, was this before or after the Rey Mysterio match?
This was after. So they did a...
Yeah. That match, I mean, even, again, I mentioned the tapes, and I watched them all in order. I started Bash at the Beach when NWO started, and I think it went up until Sold Out 2001. So it was the whole era. And, you know, I wouldn't get to see the Nitros, I wouldn't get to see the Thunders, I'd have to see the pre-pay-per-view. And it mentioned Kevin Nash, and I think it would have been Luger, facing Conan and Rey Mysterio in a mask versus hair match. If Conan and Rey Mysterio won, then Miss Elizabeth would get her head shaved. If Nash and Luger won, then Rey would have to remove his mask. Are you fucking kidding me? Are you serious? You're gonna have Conan, like, really? Oh yeah, Conan and Rey Mysterio are gonna beat Nash and Luger and we're gonna shave Miss Elizabeth's head. No. Nash and Luger winning, no matter what. Ray's getting his mask taken off. Luckily, WWE put it back on him and made probably millions of dollars off his mask and his merchandise. Because Bischoff's an idiot.
Yeah, why?
Like I said, if an 8-year-old can watch a VHS and be like, oh, they're winning, there's an issue.
Yeah, Rey Mysterio, his whole identity is that fucking mask.
Yeah, and you're not going to shave Miss Elizabeth.
At least somebody, like, came up with the great idea to start replicating them and selling them in fucking arenas. And now Ray probably has 5 mansions.
Yeah, like I said, it's just crazy. And normally when they do a hair versus hair or mask versus match, you have to kind of guess who's going to lose. But that one, like I said, oh, yeah, Nash and Luger, 2 former heavyweight champions. Or Ray and Conan, a cruiserweight and a mid-carder. Who's gonna win? Stupid.
So late '99 is essentially Sting being cucked out here. Lex Luger tries to have a match between Meng. Is it Meng?
Meng, yep.
I didn't watch WCW. And
the man called Meng.
And Elizabeth, but Sting saves her. Lex Luger throws her into a mud pit. Sting rescues her. And all this leads to a match between the two at Starrcade '99. And Liz hit Sting over the head with a baseball bat.
If I'm noticing one thing between these women, they like to turn on people.
Hey. Sometimes that's what makes a woman great,
Yeah.
She eventually began managing the team of Luger and Flair, known as Team Package.
Oh, yeah.
Again, it's WCW, so nothing lasts too long. April 2000, Russo and Bischoff take control of the company. All storylines are scrapped.
Yeah, again, I know it's supposed to be a woman and Elizabeth, but have you seen that? They come out to the ring with the whole roster, like, we're stripping the titles and we're resetting storylines.
Yeah, I don't. To be honest with you, I don't really hate that either. Like at that time, WWF is so popular. You're getting killed. Like I
hate that they came out and announced it. I think if they would have put it on the website or they would have done a little video package of it, then it might have been better. But to have just everyone come out and be like, hey, heavyweight champion, you're stripped. Hey, tag team champion, you're stripped. Hey, guys that are supposed to be fighting, you're not anymore.
What I would have done, because I've said, actually, no, at this time, Russo's kind of known, right?
Yeah, bro.
And obviously Bischoff, I wouldn't have them even do it. I'd have somebody. I don't know. I can't think of somebody off the top of my head that was around at the time in 2000. Have them, quote unquote, buy WCW. And then they're like, yeah, we're resetting everything.
Tony Khan's dad.
Everything's stripped. Yeah, Tony Khan's dad could have done it. And you know what? And I don't know. I don't know what to do from there.
No, I like the way you're thinking.
Reset the brand. Like part of me wants to do like it's kind of hard to do. They didn't have as much talent. It was easier to do in WWF, but trying to do like separate shows. But
they had a lot of talent. They just didn't use them, and they gave them such stupid contracts that they only had to wrestle so much a year. The talent on that roster, especially the mid card, the cruiserweights, could have carried a promotion, but because all the money and all the focus was put on the main eventers, it truly fucked everything up. But where did this leave Elizabeth?
She became the target of Vince Russo. He kidnapped her.
Of course she did. Oh, okay, very cool.
And he said that he owned her in her contract.
Oh, he owned her. Yeah. That's a very bro move.
Yeah, the bro would force her into matches with
oh my god,
wrestlers, trained female wrestlers.
I'm glad you said into matches, but yeah, keep going.
But her time was short in WCW. She was released in August of 2000 by World Championship Wrestling, but that would not be the last. We see Elizabeth in wrestling. She would make one final appearance with Lex at the World Wrestling All-Stars European Tour.
Oh.
Where Lex Luger won the World Wrestling All-Stars World Championship.
It's crazy that in 2000 Luger was still a main eventer, but good for Elizabeth for getting that payday.
Yeah, why not? But unfortunately, May 1st, 2003, she is found dead. Well, she dies in a hospital after being found by Lex Luger in her condo. She was passed out as a result of apparent overdose. She was only 42. The Tuscaloosa Times on that same day, on August 3rd, 2003, like it's not the same day, a couple months later, the autopsy came out for Miss Elizabeth. She died from overdose of pills and alcohol. The death of the wrestling personality known as Miss Elizabeth was a result of an accidental overdose of pills and alcohol, Cobb County officials say. Elizabeth was 42, and she had a blood alcohol level of 0.29.
Yikes.
For those of you that may not know, at least in Michigan, it's 0.008 or 08.
Yeah, 0.08.
0.08. And there's a mix of painkillers, nausea medicine, and tranquilizers in their system.
Wonder she was nauseous.
She shared a home with wrestler Lex Luger. Luger was arrested and charged with 13 counts of possession of a controlled substance and a count of distribution of a dangerous drugs the day of her death. Elizabeth had been married to former wrestler Randy the Macho Man Savage, and
Mhm.
was his manager before the divorce in 1992. Blah 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 blah.
Yeah, I know a lot of people don't think Macho Man was truly ever over Elizabeth's death. I know Luger, even today, still feels guilt. It's just a tragic event, especially at a time where it seemed like within a 3-4 year span, a lot of big legends were dropping.
Yeah. While we're here, real quick, I just want to point
Yeah.
this out just to shit on Lex a little bit more. This is on Miss Elizabeth's Wikipedia page.
Okay.
On April 19th, about a month before her death,
Okay.
Elizabeth was involved in a domestic dispute with Luger, who struck her in the garage of their townhouse in Marietta, Georgia. Police found Elizabeth with 2 bruised eyes, a bump on her head, and a cut lip. Luger was charged with a misdemeanor count of battery and was released on a $2,500 bond. And then 2 days
That's
later,
crazy.
on April 21st, Luger was arrested for driving under the influence after rear-ending another car while driving his Porsche. According to the report on the arrest, Luger had slurred speech and bloodshot eyes and could not locate his driver's license. Luger had a 9mm Luger handgun in the car.
Stop.
Luger had a Luger.
This is
What's
this is
that?
just crazy. I mean, even the connections between the two, both in Georgia.
Yep. Yeah. Marietta, Georgia. That's where even after this is even after WCW was out of business, a lot of the old wrestlers still lived in Georgia.
Yeah.
'Cause they made everybody relocate to Atlanta suburbs. Elizabeth was a passenger in the vehicle at the time, but she was sent home in a taxi. Luger was also driving with a suspended license at the time, due to a previous offense of driving with expired tags and no proof of insurance.
And I will say, I'm not the biggest Luger fan. I don't know if I made that clear on these podcasts or not. Not the biggest Luger fan. I will say, with everything that happened now versus where he is now, he's in a lot better place. That's not going to bring Elizabeth back by any means, but he did, he's cleaned up. You can tell he feels sorrow for what happened. It's just, it's just a mess. Both of these, like I said, both these women died of unfortunate circumstances. I wish they could be recognized more. I think the PWI award is as close as woman/Nancy is ever going to get to a Hall of Fame or an award. I don't see WWE ever taking the risk of even giving woman like a legacy Hall of Fame, because then people would look her name up and see everything associated. Definitely not her fault, but it's just poor circumstances. I hold out hope for Elizabeth. I kind of thought the year Savage went in, they would have done Elizabeth too. I don't know if it's her family keeping her from it, but I mean, she was divorced. She was just seeing Luger. You'd have to be close family at this point, but I mean, even if she got the Lifetime Achievement Award, she definitely deserves it. As you said, First Lady of Wrestling. She was involved in almost all of Savage's big moments. She also managed Hogan and Flair. I mean, it's a pretty good resume just of those three right there.
Yeah.
Adding Nash and Luger just bolsters it. I mean, I don't know what's keeping her from going in. It's not that WWE can't get her licensed. I have 3 of her figures in my basement. 2 on the wall and 1 with an open Randy Savage figure. So, I mean, they've got her license. She's been in video games.
Yeah, there's some sort of obviously relationship with the family, so I don't know why she hasn't even been mentioned.
Yeah, I would have thought she would have went in. Oh, I always forget which one it. Well, before WrestleMania night, or before WrestleMania 20, before WrestleMania 21, they put in like all the big guys, your Venturas, your Hogans, your Keenans, your Pipers. I think she fits with that group. Or even if she didn't then, put her with Savage. I'm waiting for her. She's one of those. They don't have very many left that I think need to go in that has a positive relationship with WWE. She's definitely one of them. Waiting to see when they pull the trigger. I'm waiting to see who inducts her. I mean, I have this bad feeling in my stomach it could be Hogan, because he's really all that's left. Maybe they have flair to it. Maybe they have a woman come out and, talk about, kind of like they did with Sunny, kind of like they did with, I think they did with Trish. Just have a bunch of women come out. Thank you for everything you've done, Elizabeth. And then have the Macho Man's music play. But we'll just have to see. Maybe this will be the year. WrestleMania 40. They always try and have a woman or a manager. Why not someone that's both? And as I said, I don't think Nancy will ever truly get WWE recognition. Maybe somewhere along the line, someone else will be able to recognize her. But unfortunately, they never worked in TNA. They didn't really work in NWA. I don't think AEW, maybe with Jericho being there and having such a good relationship with her sister. But I just don't know how you organically do that without mentioning Chris. I would love to organically do that without mentioning Chris. I can't come up with a way how to.
Yeah, even if you, it's going to be obvious that you do.
Yeah.
If you are, and she, after ECW, she went to WCW and managed Kevin Sullivan, and that's it.
That's it.
She didn't do anything else. I promise.
I would love for her to get more flowers. The reason we actually did this one, the beginnings of it, was her getting the Lifetime Achievement Award, because I thought that was a big step forward.
Yeah.
I mean,
I think it's probably the closest thing that she could get, other than Hall of Fame.
Yep. And if she gets in the Hall of Fame, I mean, she definitely has her supporters. But again, the big hurdle is the whole Chris. But, as I mentioned earlier, we included these two because, I mean, they redefined valet. They put a stamp on it. Because although woman wrestled a couple times and Elizabeth did later on, they didn't have to wrestle all the time. I mentioned Moolah earlier, but she would get in the ring. I mentioned Sherry. She would get in the ring. Baby Doll would get involved. Precious would get involved. Woman would get involved, but not all the time. Elizabeth get involved, not all the time. These two would be that eye candy at the side of the ring, but without being too seductive. They redefined the valet for the better, truthfully. And I think the best way to compare either of them, which I might get flack for this, kind of a Paul Heyman role. They're there, but they do not take eyes off the main talent. They just enhance.
Yeah. It's a lost art, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know of any recently. I mean, a lot of them, it takes attention away from the talent. Maybe Lana with Rusev to an extent, but then Vince kind of muddled that up.
Yeah.
I mean, Karen Jarrett with Jeff Jarrett. I'm sure people hate that I'm putting her in with, but that, to me, is the same type of valet. For a minute, I thought maybe it'd be Maxine with the the Alpha Academy, or American Alpha, but she gets in the ring, she wrestles now. So I think probably Lana's the closest. But as I said, Vince decided to mess that up when Rusev and Lana decided to announce they were married via TMZ.
And I think Summer was close too before she became a wrestler. I guess she was always a wrestler.
Oh, it always happens. They start doing good at valet, and then whether it be AEW, Impact, NWA, WWE, you think you can wrestle?
Could you wrestle?
Yeah. But if you get a moment, I'm sure everyone has seen a lot of Elizabeth.
Yeah.
Definitely take time out, go to YouTube, look up woman, especially as the fallen angel, especially with the Sandman. I don't know if you can look her up on the network. I don't think. I mean, I don't know if it'd be different than her or with Chris Benoit, because Chris would be the guy, while woman it would be a Sandman match versus Tommy Dreamer. So I don't know if they would just leave her off the listing. So Sandman versus Tommy Dreamer, not Sandman with woman versus Tommy Dreamer, or Kevin Sullivan with the Fallen Angel versus Dusty Rhodes.
Last week when we were talking about this before, we tried looking it up, but Peacock's search is so
booty
horrible. It's not like it was on the old WWE network, but man,
definitely. I mean, look it up. I'm hoping that with Chris Jericho kind of getting her name out there again because of her sister, that maybe we see one of these third-party companies even make a figure of her. Just something. I mean, I didn't think we'd have an Owen Hart figure in the stores. AEW pulled it off. And there's many good third-party wrestling figure company. I think there's about 4 or 5 right now that put out solid work. And I mean, whatever money's made from that could go to her sister, could go to the surviving Benoit child, although not hers. I know she cared for him like he was her own. There's a lot you could do with it.
Yeah.
Man, these two, like I said, redefined valet role, but they're pretty much looked at as negative blips. Nancy with the obvious, Miss Elizabeth with the how Savage treated her, even though some people deny it, some people agree with it, and then how her life ended. Definitely make sure you.
I never got that.
Savage?
Elizabeth, she's talked about, but she's gotten none of the recognition really.
Yeah.
She's gotten it from fans, but not from the people that matter.
Oh, even during an Evolution pay-per-view, right, where it's supposed to be women in wrestling, she's never once brought up. But then you're gonna bring up some women that I don't think deserve it. I'm not going to say names. But you're not going to bring Elizabeth up? It's crazy to me. There's very few managers/valets that when you say a wrestler's name, common fans will be like, oh, and blank. And when you say Randy Savage, most people will say Miss Elizabeth. So, as I said, if you get a chance, look up Woman/The Fallen Angel. Look up some of those Miss Elizabeth moments we told you about. WrestleMania 3. I mean, hell, even WrestleMania 2. So 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8. Look them all up. Watch the Elizabeth match. But that comes to the end of our episode on Nancy and Liz. If you made it this far, make sure whichever platform you're on, you like, you subscribe, share this for us. If you're listening on YouTube, I mean, we are at time recording at 318 fans, which means we are 182 away from partnering with YouTube. Something that about a month ago was, I mean, shot in the dark. Now we're almost there. If you want to support us even more, we have an Etsy page. Clothing, shot glasses, Logan Scripture journals. Signed 8x10s by us. I think that's about it from me. Anything you want to add?
No. We just have a lot of great content coming up. With WrestleMania coming up, it's one of our more. I know we typically don't do podcasts
recaps
around pay-per-views and stuff like that, but this is usually our one exception. I think we're probably gonna have. I'm calling it WrestleMania Extravaganza.
Okay.
Like that. I don't know. We'll work on the name. We'll do WrestleMania Jeopardy. I think we're gonna do some sort of fan giveaway. I think.
We usually do a preview as well, kind of give our guest, or not our guest, but our guesses, our hopes, and then we usually do a recap, just kind of discussing the big moments. The Hall of Fame's coming up. I mentioned when we re-uploaded the Bray Wyatt tribute to YouTube that he's talked about as one of the big names. Paul Heyman's talked about as one of the big names. Maybe we'll see Elizabeth. Maybe this will be a topical podcast. Who knows?
Yeah. We usually we'll go through the Hall of Fame and inductees this year.
My favorite part.
Yeah. There'll be a lot of content coming up these next couple months, and who knows? We could have some live streams coming up. I know there's a new Ric Flair documentary on Netflix that we haven't even watched or touched yet. If that's something you'd like us to do, like a watch along, or even do. I know one of our favorite YouTubers does this. Mine and yours, YMS. Your movie sucks.
Yes.
They upload film commentaries, so you can kind of put it on and watch it along with us. We can comment on the movie while it's happening. Just have a good time. Maybe that's something if you guys would be interested in. We can do it. But yeah, links in the description. And start tweeting at WWE. Let's get Elizabeth and Woman in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah. I mean, even like I said, if they put Woman in the Legacy wing, so it's kind of hidden like they do some people, that would still be, I think, enough for her family to get those flowers.